Now, as we approach Doctor Who's 60th anniversary, we can't help but look back on some of the less appropriate, less entertaining, and slightly lower quality anniversary specials. So that's why today we're going to have a look at Doctor Who's 25th anniversary, Silver Nemesis.
Yeah.
So Silver Nemesis was a story for the 7th Doctor and Ace, part of season 25, the 25th year, obviously. It was broadcast in 3 parts from 23rd of November to the 7th of December 1988. It was written by Kevin Clarke and directed by Chris Clough. 3 parts, Cybermen, statues, Nazis, everything. What do you think?
The Cybermen were good.
Wow. I mean, were they though? Because
I found them to be more of just like a secondary threat. They weren't the focus of the story, and I kind of feel that they got done dirty a bit as a result.
I think in general, the Cybermen in the 80s were done dirty after Earthshock. They get Earthshock, and then everything else after that is very... 5 Doctors is fun, but in terms of Cybermen, it doesn't really do them great.
Secondary.
Yeah, it's the Cybermen Master team up again.
Yeah.
Attack of the Cybermen, never been that fond of. And Silver Nemesis, I haven't watched Silver Nemesis now, before we doing this review, for probably about 4 or 5 years since I last went through everything.
It's been a long while for me.
And I remember the last time I watched it, I really didn't get on with it. And this time, I enjoyed it more, but there's still a lot of issues for me personally.
Yeah.
I think... We'll start with things we liked. Be positive to start with. Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred are fantastic in this, as they are in every single story they're in together. The chemistry between those two is completely unmatched, to be honest. When you think of Doctor companion pairings, you think of like the 4th Doctor and Sarah Jane, or the 2nd Doctor and Jamie, or the 7th Doctor and Ace. They're the ones that really spring to mind. Yeah, and I think I love just the banter between them, despite that. On set, apparently they actually had a bit of an argument during this story because that's how tense everything was when they were filming. But, they're ever the professionals when it comes to...
actually doing...
Yeah, because you can't tell.
No, it just seems like everything's fine from a viewing standpoint. Obviously, we're not going to know what happened behind the scenes apart from what they've said. So...
And I think there's a nice amount of visual effects that I quite like, and there's all the pyrotechnic stuff with like the end of part 1 and beginning of part 2, that battle between the Cybermen and the Nazis, and later on with Ace. I do get a bit bored of the gold stuff by this point with the Cybermen.
Yeah,
it is a bit
I'm fed up with it.
Yeah.
It's very kind of forced down your throat a bit, innit?
I mean, like in Earthshock, for example, the Doctor uses Adric's gold on the Cyber Leader, but he takes a good scrape of it, and it doesn't kill him, it just sort of slows him down a bit, whereas this Ace is like slingshotting. I mean, that was fun. It was fun to watch.
It was entertaining, and Ace is a character that just loves to blow stuff up, so it kind of had to go a bit that way for her, because it's not going to be a case of, she's good at blowing stuff up and destroying stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't beat a metal suit. She blew up a Dalek, for God's sake. Like, if you have a struggle against a Cyberman, that's just kind of really causing issues.
But they do put her under a bit of pressure, which was good. And that site now that they filmed that warehouse in isn't there anymore. It's now the O2 Arena.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting little fact I found out while doing a bit of note-taking. I haven't even got my notes up there. These are just the things that are coming off the top of my head. Because it's a weird story. It's weirdly paced, this one.
It is. It's very much... all over the place as well. So you're getting modern time, you're getting flashback to the past, to 1638, you're getting the Cybermen stuff.
I did, yeah.
Well,
I think with it's just a case of, part 1 is very much info dumping and setting up the scene ready for the Cybermen arriving at the end of part 1. And that's when it drops the ball for me in terms of quality, because part 1 isn't that bad. It's
enjoyable.
It's fun.
It gets you enticed into the story, doesn't it?
It's good moments of humour. I found this one a lot funnier than I remember it doing, and I don't know if it's intentional.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same.
I don't know if it was meant to make me laugh, but I did laugh while I was watching it. I think the stuff with Ace and the 7th Doctor when they're, in the river and stuff, that made me laugh. The stuff with Lady Painful and Richard.
Yeah,
all of that fish out of water stuff was funny. At first I thought, these are really annoying, aren't they? But then the stuff with the skinheads, when they're stringing up the skinheads by their ankles from the tree, that was funny.
Yeah.
Again, not sure if it was meant to be.
Oh, she's a social worker.
There's good little lines like that. I mean, there's a lot of... It doesn't really give off, like... I don't watch that and think, oh yes, this is a 25th anniversary special.
No, it's
more... If anything, I think Remembrance of the Daleks is the more appropriate anniversary special. And this story is basically Remembrance of the Daleks.
Just
with certain elements changed. It's instead of being set in the 1960s, it's set in the 1980s. You've got, neo-Nazis, like sort of new, like a fascist group against an iconic Doctor Who villain, fighting over this, object that will give them
power,
like unimaginable power, while the Seventh Doctor and Ace are sort of manipulating things from behind the scenes. It's a remembrance of the Daleks, which was only 2 stories before. So it's a weird angle to take, I think.
Yeah, for me, the whole thing's just made up. Like, it's saved by Sylvester McCoy.
I think, yeah,
just rattling chess moves while he's weaving in and out the Cybermen to get
cool.
the bow.
They'll be looking at that, what happens later on in the case of Fenric, where we get our first sort of proper like story arc with a character in the classic series. I'd love to have seen what they've done more with that if it wasn't cut so short. But setting up the chessboard and everything, and you could tell there were hints of that we're going to make the Doctor more than just another Time Lord. That was very the 1980s, 1990s version of the Timeless Child. While I wouldn't have agreed with what they would have done, I think I would have loved to see how it panned out.
Yeah,
I would have loved to have seen what would have happened if they had gone down that route of making the Doctor this, ancient Time Lord character, and what would they have done if Ace had joined the Time Lords and all that. I don't think it necessarily would have been the best Doctor Who material we'd ever seen, but it would have been enjoyable.
Yeah,
maybe
because some of that classic Who humour really was quite good.
Yeah,
through all of it, and it still gets good laughs today. And I think in a lot of cases it's better than New Who in that set, like that, just that. Some cheesy little gag that gets that quick laugh, but it's memorable.
I can think of quite a few classic Who moments that are genuinely funny and that try to be funny as well. Like, not just sat there going, "Oh, look at that monster, it looks rubbish," but things that actually that's quite a funny line or a funny take on something.
Yeah.
But basically, the story of this is that we have the Seventh Doctor and Ace are alarmed, literally he's got a little pocket alarm. Because this Nemesis statue is returning to Earth, but as well as knowing about it, there's a group of neo-Nazis who also know about it and are after it. There's also a fleet of Cybermen and a weird couple
from the 1638,
like the 1600s or whatever.
Yeah,
and you think, do they all need to be there? I don't think we needed the Nazis in it at all. They had no bearing on the plot. They all get bumped off.
Well, the only bearing they had was the bow. The silver bow.
Yeah,
that's all they brought to the table. Literally,
you could have quite easily had one of them having 2. They were looking for the statue. I don't know. Anton Diffring is good. I mean, I love the fact that he only agreed to do it because it meant he could be in the UK for Wimbledon. That's the only reason he agreed to do it.
That's brilliant.
He's a good performance. The rest of them are all very stock characters. They get basically immediately dispatched by the Cybermen in the beginning of part 2, which, like I said, that's a great set piece. Kevin McCulloch tapping away on his synthesizers, bringing us those. Classic 1980s Doctor Who incidental music, motorbike.
Boom, boom.
But, I think episode 1 is a strong start. There's some good little moments here. It does sort of pick up this feel, but then it just plays out like a generic, run around. It's a quite Chibnall-esque sort of hopping from one place. All right, not as extreme.
No,
but it is like, we need to go over there, jump in the TARDIS. We need to go over there now, jump in the TARDIS. We need to go over there now.
Yeah, it's very much all over the place. I mean, the shots for Windsor were beautiful. Yeah, they were really nice. The stuff they did there were great. Some of it again though just wasn't needed.
Yeah, do you know? And all those that crowd of tour guides were all made up of. Well, the tour guide and the tour party were all made up of Doctor Who alumni. There was Nicholas Courtney in there. Fiona Cumming, Kevin Clark, Andrew Cartmel. I think there was loads of them in there.
Nice little caveat.
Yeah, not that you could spot. I couldn't really spot anyone apart from Nicholas Courtney though, looking at it, just because Nicholas Courtney's so tall.
Yeah.
But the others, I was like, I couldn't place them from the backs of their head. But it's a fun little link, and it's quite celebratory for the anniversary special, But I don't know. There's bits of it. Like I said, the humour I find really funny. The stuff with the skinheads is quite fun. The Cybermen being confused by the jazz music.
Yeah, that was
like, this is meaningless.
Yeah, that was brilliant. It was.
But the rest of it, I don't know. The Cybermen for me, I have a bit of an issue with the Cybermen because I think when they're great, they're good. But
when they're bad,
when they're everything else, if their story isn't perfectly serving the Cybermen, the rest of it just makes them feel like generic robotic soldiers that you could replace them with any. You could replace the Cybermen in the story with any sort of foe, and it wouldn't make that much of a difference, really.
Yeah, I do feel really sorry for them because there was a lot of explosions.
I do feel sorry for the poor buggers in those suits, so to be fair. I get that a lot with the Cybermen. You've got Sparks, especially, I know this isn't necessarily relevant, but in Attack of the Cybermen, in the end of part 1, where it shoots him through the helmet and the whole head explodes as he falls down, I thought, I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, no chance. The actors who were playing the Cybermen back then had a real set of cojones.
And David Banks is really good as a cyber leader again. It's just a shame they've got quite crappy material to deal with. Because David Banks knows the Cybermen. I don't know if you've ever read his book that he did on the Cybermen. that does like an in-depth like breakdown of the cyber law and everything, and explains the different types of Cybermen. It's brilliant. It's on Spotify, narrated by him. If you get a chance to check that out, do. It's really interesting. But I just think that the Cybermen in this get very, they're not as menacing. If you look at Earthshock, they feel like a credible threat in that. Yeah. In this, I don't really feel it. And I think the new shiny look of them looks really nice outside on location. Inside. But the moment they go into studio, they just look plasticky and cheap.
Yeah.
I don't...
It was a shame, because there was that, especially with the close-ups as well in the part 3. With the cyber leader's rest of his body and stuff. It was just very much, okay, you're not as good as you looked earlier on. It
just looks a bit cheap. Like I said, on location, they look great.
Yeah.
But you put them in a studio, and immediately when it shows up a bit of the budget issues at the time, should we say.
Should we bring up the human sacrifice that allowed Painful and Richard?
Yeah, what was all that about?
Yeah.
That was a hell of a tonal whiplash. Because Richard comes across the whole time as a bit of an idiot. He's very much He's very much like the sort of
serving his lady, but he's clearly a peasant.
Yeah, he's lady. Well, I wouldn't even go that. I wouldn't go necessarily that far, but he is very much like the subordinate to Lady Painful. And as soon as he put him in 1988, he's all over the street. He doesn't know what he's doing. He wants to get back. He's scared of the llamas, which is another funny little scene.
Yeah.
But you actually think about it, he's actually a bit of a bastard.
Yeah.
Like there's that blood sacrifice at the start, which I didn't really buy. Like,
no, it was a bit
too like witchcrafty stuff for my liking. I've never really been a fan of that.
And
sort
just
of thing.
Casually get time travel powers from sacrificing an old man.
Yeah. Which was odd.
Yeah.
I do like that scene though when they're in the cafe initially when they turn up, and she puts that chair through the window and nearly falls out of it at the same time. That was quite funny.
Yeah.
But the whole fish out of water thing was fun. But that's another thing that really slows the pacing down, because you get all this exposition thrown at you about the Nemesis and what the Nemesis does, and the fact that it's made out of living metal and all that, which is all really cool. But we don't see any of it because you're too busy, you're telling us
between everything as well, and it's just like.
But instead of here's an idea. Instead of having Lady Painful and Richard having, a Barney with the skinheads, actually show us what this Nemesis statue can do. Don't have them sat. What was the whole thing of them sat in the car with Dolores Gray about as well? That was another thing, because it slows to a grinding halt. There's pacing issues all over this story.
Was clearly
exposition and explanation, and then it's just like well, now we're going to stop for 10 minutes and just have a chat in the car.
That scene in the car was definitely just put in there for filler. They had a gap to fill, and Painful and Richard needed to get to where the Nemesis was. It's just convenience, I think, to fit that scene in. It didn't add to the story, didn't take away, but it was just a pointless scene. They could have just rocked up, looking out of breath as if they'd run it.
Yeah,
and I feel that would have been a bit more authentic and a decent bit.
Yeah,
and you could have a story, a little bit of like a retrack of how they got there and what they had to go through to get there, and just explain their troubles of having to cope being a fish out of water.
Yeah, I think you could have cut episode 1 right down and cut the Nazis from the whole thing, because they don't really do much. As good as Anton Differing's quite good, but he doesn't really get much to do. Cut them out. Have episode 1 trimmed down, and instead of the sort of spaced out running around Windsor Castle and all that, cut all that crap out. Have a nice prologue that shows like what the Nemesis statue is all about, what it can do. Even have a prologue where, at that point you could have had a previous Doctor or something come back to be the one that launches Nemesis into space.
Yeah.
As a 25th anniversary celebration, having them in a little cameo, I think would have worked quite well. And then you cut down on all the running around the countryside, being scared of llamas, and actually get down to the story. Because it's like, it starts and then it stops, and it's like, it's all over the shop, really.
Yeah. I just looking through my notes. She was the woman in the car. I forget her name.
Dolores Gray.
Yeah, Dolores Gray. That just shows how important she was to the story.
I can't remember her character name. I only know because it's a very John Nathan Turner thing that we got this big anniversary special. We'll get a famous American actress in.
Yeah. So she was related to Painful's family in the 1600s, and Painful was telling her how her long great aunt died through poison and stuff in 1621, if I am right.
Something along those lines, isn't it?
Yeah, I did pay attention quite a lot, to be honest, and it hurt my head.
That's the thing, though, is you've got to focus on it for ages and take all this information, and then we've got to sit and watch the Seventh Doctor and Ace just sat confusing the Cybermen listening to jazz music, as funny as that was.
It was nice.
It was quite. It is meaningless. Is my favourite quote. It sums up the whole story. To be honest,
she's a social worker. That was
funny as well.
That was bit for me.
And
That's
I do like that they are starting to set up the manipulative, darker side of the Seventh Doctor, leading into season 26 and beyond. Because I think season 26 of Classic Doctor Who is probably one of the best seasons of the whole thing. I love everything from that series. Even Battlefield, which is a bit less highly regarded compared to the other three, but I do enjoy it, and I'd have loved to have seen what they carry on, because they do carry on a bit in Big Finish, having the Seventh Doctor and Ray's butt heads a lot more, because she gets fed up with this manipulative stuff from him. I think it does work.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really interesting dynamic, because you don't really get that, because, it's interesting because when you look at the 80s TARDIS teams as well, none of them are particularly that friendly, really. You've got quite the bickering amongst the Fifth Doctor TARDIS teams, especially with Tegan, and then the Sixth Doctor and Perry. Mel and the Sixth Doctor, not so much, but you don't really get a chance to see that anyway. And, so it is quite nice to have this sort of that darker side again, but still, you can tell that they're very much friends and they do enjoy just being around each other.
Yeah. I think where this story kind of falls apart, you have to wait until the last 5 minutes to hear the Cyberman's plot.
Yeah.
You're waiting till right towards the end, just before, spoiler, Cyber Leader dies, again, to gold. What a stupid issue. You'd have thought it would have evolved by now. But their whole plan, as it turned out, was to destroy the Earth and create a new Mondas. You find that out in the last 5 minutes. That's what they were going to use the Nemesis for.
Throwaway line as well.
Yeah, it was very much just, meh, this is what we're going to do. Oh, we've got 2 minutes left and we're going to die.
Yeah.
If they'd done that, they could have used the second episode really to set that plot up and actually have it sort of almost work, and then the Doctor stops it.
Yeah, this is what I mean. You could have used that structure so much better.
Yeah.
You could have the first episode dedicated to the Nemesis and Lady Painful and Richard, then bring the Cybermen in. Episode 2 focuses on them with everyone else in the sideline, and then episode 3 it all comes together then.
Yeah, it could have been a lot nicer.
And we don't need the Nazis. There are a few different issues. I think the structure is all over the place. The plot isn't that. I remember enjoying it more when I saw it when I was younger on VHS, because there's a lot more, or at least I remember there being a lot more action to it.
Yeah, and
I think
when
that's
you're
what
younger.
helps.
Yeah, when you're younger, that's kind of what you're looking for. You want something that's exciting and keeping you interested in the thing. I looking older, if it wasn't for the comedy stuff, I'd have probably fallen asleep.
Yeah, I think I don't know.
As bad as that sounds.
There are points to it that I think really could have worked, and I think it just needs a general restructure for it to actually resemble anything meaningful.
Yeah.
It's just not something that I particularly enjoyed. And in terms of anniversary specials, it's not up there.
No,
if
so
you compare it to
behind.
things like the 3 Doctors, the 5 Doctors, Day of the Doctor, Dimensions, I'm joking. But it doesn't really stick out as like, oh yes, this is the 25th anniversary. It's like, oh, this is that Cyberman story from 7th Doctor era.
So yeah,
I think there's a lot of repeated elements to it as well. Like I said, it's Remembrance of the Daleks. It's done differently, and the whole thing with
they have clearly just rehashed the story.
Yeah, there's a lot of rehashing, because even the Nemesis statue coming back every 25 years. That's very Halley's Comet from Attack of the Cybermen. I don't know.
Yeah, they get very much like it's been going for 25 years by this point. It's understandable that you could start running out of ideas at that point. You don't know which direction to go because you've had such a long run.
But you think they'd be more conscious of it, though.
Yeah.
Someone would have gone, hey, this is a bit like that story we did like just the other month. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it would be. It was just rehashed.
Yeah.
But
anything else to add to Silver Nemesis?
Well, I mean, it was cool that you had to have the silver arrow, the silver bow with the silver nemesis.
Yeah, it's very
all made out of Validium, I believe.
I see. I couldn't even remember what it was called.
Validium. So that was the living metal.
Yeah.
It was Validium. It was created
Vibranium.
by Rassilon and Rassilon and Omega,
and the other, whoever that could have been.
Yeah, as a means of defense for Gallifrey. Not sure really what it did, but the Doctor sent it up into space, and every 27 years it comes back to Earth.
25.
Was it 25?
25, yeah, it's the whole point, isn't it?
But it landed just before the First World War, just before the Second World War, just before Kennedy's assassination.
or the start of Doctor Who,
Yeah.
which, depending on your point
Yeah.
of view, could have been much worse for society. But
Yeah. So it's just like, okay, so in theory, the Doctor's been involved in 3 of probably the worst conflicts and situations to be in recent history.
yeah, it's an interesting take on it, and I think that if it was some sort of natural phenomenon that kept, say, if it was drawn to Earth every 25 years and the Doctor had to send it back out again,
That would be
add a bit more stake to the story, because you think, well, this has happened now, what's going to happen now if they don't do it? We don't know.
yeah.
Because in the last 5 minutes, everything gets sorted. There's that really weird bit where I think it's implied that Lady Painful is sucked into the statue.
Yeah, I
but
had
she
that
just
in
sort
my
of
notes.
screams and runs and goes, ah, and falls in, and it's like, I don't know, because I always
It was
thought,
so bad.
I always thought that she jumped into it for some reason, but then it's more like what I watched it this time. I thought, wait, does she get sucked into it? Is this like something she does voluntarily? I don't know. Does anybody? I don't know.
But then the Nemesis goes up to Cyberfleet, and Cyberfleet go boom boom.
Yeah,
And it was
almost like, and even Ace even points out and goes, "Oh, it's just how you stop the Daleks." And it's like,
Yeah.
make it more obvious that we haven't completely ripped this idea off from a serial 2, like 4 weeks ago by this point.
Yeah, it was great line choice there for Ace. I think they've just acknowledged that they couldn't be bothered to think of fresh material.
I think it was them going, "Look, we know what we've done, so you don't need to point it out."
Yeah, but it works, but it didn't. So
Yeah, Silver Nemesis not one of my favourites.
no, not one I'm in a hurry to return to.
I think the Cybermen stories for me, especially in the classic era, Cybermen stories that work well for me are the 60s ones and Earthshock.
Yeah,
All the others, and even like I don't even particularly like the Wheel in Space. The other 60s
no,
Cybermen
Wheel in
stories
Space
are
is a bit weird, but 10th Planet, 2 of the Cybermen, Moonbase, Invasion,
Earthshock.
yeah, great.
And Big Finish, I know I'm ringing that Big Finish bell again, but they really get the
Ding-a-ling.
Cybermen. They do the Cybermen brilliantly. I mean, you always hear people talk about spare parts and everything, but there's a load of other stories where Big Finish just nail the Cybermen exactly, and they really play on what the ramifications of being a Cyberman can be, or what the Cybermen mean, rather than just, wow, look at these stomping shiny men with their... No, that sounds weird.
In latex.
These shiny silver men with their guns. Oh no, what will they be? They become drones essentially. I'm not a fan of it.
I think while they still seem like drones in New Who when they come in Rise of the Cybermen Age of Steel.
Rise of the Cybermen Age of Steel, I think, is
Very,
still the
very
strongest,
good.
strongest Cybermen story of the new series.
It was so good. They still kind of come across a bit drony at the start, but then it's just...
But that's the point, that they're like the early Cybermen for that universe. So I get that. And I'm not expecting anything ground because they're reintroducing it at that point. But I think I don't really think many of the Cybermen stories have hit.
I think it's saved.
Fair.
No, I think
World Enough in Time, I guess.
it's
But
probably
that's
the closest it's come.
Yeah, but that shifts halfway through into being more about the Doctor and the Master, and the Cybermen become a B plot.
Doomsday was good, but then the Cybermen and the Daleks very much became the B plot because it was Rose's farewell.
But at the least they're served all right, and that they feel like a credible threat.
Yeah.
And that cliffhanger is built up not because, oh my god, it's the Daleks, but it's the Daleks and the Cybermen. It's
Like
all
the
kicking off.
two of the Doctor's most long-hated foes. The next Doctor, they were done okay until the end.
It's a decent enough episode, but again, it doesn't really feel like they need to be there. It could be any sort of villain, really.
It was a fun story though.
Yeah. Closing time. I hate closing time.
I just like it for the family jokes of James Corden and Matt Smith's characters.
I actually hate
Closing
Time.
It was just for the comedy factor that
Closing
I really
Time is
like
one
it.
of those stories that I would really have to try hard to find redeeming features about.
It was filler.
Linda Barron's in it. She's good.
The Cybermats came back.
Yeah. But you can't just say the Cybermats came back, therefore it is good.
Yes,
that's great. The Cybermats were it. They were also in Revenge of the Cybermen as well, and that was a bit of
shib, yeah. But no, it's a shame that they were done. They were revived heavily and very, very well in New Who with Rise of the Cybermen Age of Steel. And I kind of think that's helped pull a blanket over the Silver Nemesis a bit, because people do tend to forget about that, and when you think to the Cybermen, you think either 60s, Earthshock,
New Who.
or New Who.
You know what really
David
talks
Tennant.
about? Attack of the Cybermen.
No, there's so many Cybermen stories, like Nightmare and Silver. I don't think any people talk about. That was horrendous.
Because the fact that has Neil Gaiman's credit on is still a joke, because there's no way he wrote the majority of that. It's all so Stephen Moffat. I just no.
But Deep Water, the Cybermen and Deepwater, and
again, the Cybermen in that are literally a plot device.
yeah, they're just there as a drone.
About 8 or 9 lines of dialogue,
and most of that's dead Danny Pink.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like they are a plot device in that story. They're not. Yeah. We're going off on a tangent. Yeah, now,
we are.
Anyway.
We are just
going. If you want to
on.
see us talk more in detail about the Cybermen, you know what to do.
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, if you've seen Silver Nemesis, what do you think of it? Do you agree with us? Are we wrong?
Well, everyone's got their own opinion. There's going to be people who love it. There's going to be people like us who think they could have done better. There's going to be some who could outright hate it.
I don't hate it as much as I used to. I've gone to a bit more this time because I found bits that I found funny. Not necessarily good funny,
but funny.
But funny.
Like, and there were, like, the first part, great. Really done a good job. Was a bit all over the place, but in terms of story, done a good job.
It's one of those weird stories. It's rushed but slow at the same time.
Yeah.
It's really strange.
The cliffhanger at the end of part 1 did set up well for something they could have gone on to do and improve in the story in part 2 and 3, and it just dropped the ball, as you said. But yeah, no, that's...
Let us know. Let us know what you think. Obviously, as well, that bet that we made about recording that cover of Dimensions in Time, which Tom is really excited to do. Tell everyone it's subscribed because Tom really wants to sing it.
Yeah, really.
Can't wait.
Really do. I'm definitely not being told to smile at this point.
Anyway, we'll speak to you next week.
Yeah, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And yeah, if you have any thoughts, leave them in the comments. Any more video reviews, ideas, let us know.
We get that kebab now.
Yeah.
Banging.